One of the longest running debates in the anime sphere is subs versus dubs. Now, some people think dubs are inferior and the only way to watch is subbed, while others prefer dubs since they're a bit easier to get into. And the flames have been fanned yet again thanks to some new information from Netflix, and things aren't pretty. I have my own thoughts, feelings, and opinions about this debate, and they may be controversial, and maybe this is the video where they finally cancel me. So that's exactly what I'll be talking about today. For starters, what did Netflix say that has fanned the flames? Well, in a recent news article, Netflix announced that over 50% of their worldwide users watch anime, reaching over 150 million households, with viewership tripling over the last 5 years, and about 80 to 90% of those viewers are choosing to watch dubs. Now, there's a lot to unpack here, so let's start with some of the more obvious stuff. It is really not shocking at all when/how much growth happened, because if you think the last 5 years, that's 2020 to 2025, and COVID, I think, gave a lot of people the free time they needed to start watching anime because they were also cooped up at home with nothing else to do. So maybe that person who had really been putting off watching Full Metal Alchemist on Netflix, right? Or, Fairy Tail or One Piece, you've been putting it off for a while. Well, you got all this abundance of free time because of the pandemic, and I think they finally were able to get across that and then jump that threshold and realize that they like anime and now they're into it. And also, Netflix's catalog has really grown in the last 5 years. Like, it has grown enough to include some of the more popular shows like My Hero that were, until recently, stuck on Crunchyroll or Hulu. I remember when they finally added My Hero to Netflix and they finally added, Spy Family, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer. Like, once Netflix started getting, these more popular mainstream anime, I think that also brought more people in. Netflix has also made some serious strides in getting exclusive and original anime, which I think they do a lot better than other platforms like Disney Plus and Hulu, which I could go on a whole side tangent about that because, Disney gets shows like Mission Yozakura Family and then doesn't promote it to anyone and then wonders why the viewership numbers are so low. Like, that's on you. But in terms of Netflix exclusive stuff, you see a lot of, Delicious in Dungeon. The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity. That's the big one from this year. Sakamoto Days was also from this year. Stuff like that where you'd expect to see that on Crunchyroll. Stuff like Blue Box. They had Blue Box last year. That was such a huge get for them. And I remember seeing that and thinking, wow, okay, Netflix has this anime. I'm going to go to Netflix so that I can watch this anime, because they are getting in before Crunchyroll, before High Dive, and taking up some of these bigger things, which I think also does a lot for something I've talked about in a different video, is Crunchyroll having this monopoly on anime streaming. I think it's good. It's Netflix, so it's whatever. They raise their prices about every 2 seconds, but it is nice to have another streaming service where you can still watch the newer shows and you can watch, like, they have a really good anime catalog, so you don't feel like you're stuck going to Crunchyroll. You know what I mean? Given that catalog, it makes perfect sense that 50% of Netflixers watch anime. I mean, that catalog, it's incredible. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, you have stuff like all of JoJo's is on there, which, again, I would love to know how Netflix was able to pull exclusive rights for Stone Ocean and now Steel Ball Run. Like, how do you take away JoJo's Bizarre Adventure from Crunchyroll? I think the part that really shocked people here was that 80 to 90% of these people are dub watchers, right? That's a really high number on the 150 million, right? That's 75 million people, because they said about 50% of that watches anime, right? And almost all of them are watching dub. And that doesn't shock me if you think about the audience who would be watching on Netflix. The quote-unquote real anime fans have subscriptions to Crunchyroll and High Dive, the more hardcore, directed specifically for anime streaming services. But Netflix hits that common audience who are more likely to choose dub because, one, it's in their native language, and two, they don't really care to put in the effort of reading subs. Now, all this stuff from Netflix has much fanned the flames and stirred this debate as the sub-elitists crawl out of their cave to flex how superior they are, but I think this whole debate is irrelevant. I think an argument can be made about the quality of dubs compared to subs. Sure, 100%, I get that. And I also think there's a lot to say about, the localizers, and I've belabored that point very much in a different video about how, localization is tweaking and messing with that. But that's also something that applies to subs. Like, that's a bigger issue that applies across the board, but it's one of the key arguments used against dubs. But there's also been an uptick in the turnaround times of dubs, even just this year. I can list off the top of my head like 4 or 5 shows, like Kaiju Number 8, My Hero Academia Vigilantes, Gachi Yakuta, Dandadan, like these shows that when they come out, they have simuldub releases. I remember way back in the day when simuldub releases was reserved for like My Hero Academia, and that's it. That was the only show that was able to get a dub out the same day as the new episode. And then of course My Hero fell behind, and now they're on a 2-week behind schedule. But there are also a lot of other shows that are also roughly 1 to 2 weeks behind, as opposed to being months and months behind. I mean, you look at something like Demon Slayer, which shocks me because Demon Slayer is such a popular show, but Demon Slayer is like months behind on the dub. Like the whole season would air, and then the whole dub season would air later. And I don't know if that's just to boost analytics and like reboost it or whatever. You see the turnaround time of dubs getting quicker, if not being a simuldub release. Like the only reason I'm caught up on Dandadan and Kaiju Number 8 and stayed caught up on Vigilantes to a certain extent was because the dub was also coming out at the same time, and I never felt like I had to be significantly behind just to watch this show in the way that I wanted to watch it. But I'll come back in a second about why I like dubs. So I'll come back to that in a second. But you can also look at, in the Netflix case specifically, they delayed A Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity so that they could drop dubs at the same time as the sub. They literally said they delayed this show just so that they could have different dubs available alongside the sub. And I think it's an interesting choice because it's still airing on Netflix weekly, but the Western release was delayed. And I don't know if they looked at the analytics of like Blue Box and saw that there was a huge uptick in Blue Box viewership when the dub dropped. So then they thought, okay, well, let's delay Fragrant Flower a little bit and put the dub out at the same time. I don't know. It's just interesting to see how quickly like dubs turn around now. And like I said, there is something to say about the quality of anime dubs, most arguing that they've worsened over time. But I also would argue that I think if you're someone who prefers subs, you're going to look for the flaws in dubs. You're going to look for the negative aspects of dubs. I think because we understand English natively without having to watch subtitles, right? I think it's easier for us to be more critical of dubs. Because when you're listening to, you're watching the sub and you're listening in Japanese, you're not picking up on all the nuances and all of the different speech patterns and all of those things, because most of us don't speak Japanese, right? Like, that's why we have to watch the sub. That's why you don't turn the subtitles off and just listen to the Japanese dub. So when you're watching it in English and you're listening to the English dub, it's a lot easier to pick up on like, oh, well, that sounds really cringe because it's in my native language, right? The best example I can think of this is when people say like, Oni-chan, in the English dub, that sounds weird. You're like, huh? Or like when, the character keeps saying, oh, big brother, big brother, brother, big brother. Like, you think, huh, that's weird. That's not how we talk. But then when you listen to it in the sub, we almost have this fantasy or like this delusion that that's normal. But I do think it's easier to be critical of anime dubs if you speak English. I also want to say good dubs do still exist. Like, there are a lot of good dubs out there. I think the Dandadan dub is really good. I think the My Hero Vigilantes dub was good. I'm really enjoying the Gachi Yakuta dub. And there are other outliers like Solo Leveling. I really enjoy the dub for Solo Leveling. But I do think there are ones that do end up sounding the same. And I do not take me as defending every anime dub ever known to man. That is not what I'm doing here. I do think there are truly terrible dubs out there, right? But even then, like, sometimes if the dub is bad, it kind of makes the show more enjoyable because you're laughing at like how bad the dub was. I'm not here to, defend dubs all day, but that's what I'll say. I do think there are still good dubs out there, and it's easy to be overcritical of them. Now, my personal stance on dubs, let me tell you how I feel about dubs. I think they're fine. I take no issue with watching dubs. And my personal journey with anime has been, I started out only dub. I was a dub elitist. If it was subbed, I didn't watch it because I didn't want to read the subtitles. I didn't want to do the whole thing. And then the more I started watching more anime, I realized there were shows that weren't getting dubs. And, I was like, okay, well, I'll watch the sub because I really want to watch this show. Or like the biggest thing that got me to switch was when My Hero, the dub started getting delayed and I wanted to stay caught up. So I just started watching the subs. And then I kind of pivoted and swung around and I started watching a bunch more shows that have subs and just watching through them and, making a bit more effort, I guess, is the word I would use. But now, as I get even busier as an adult, who works a full-time job and has a life outside of work and, all of that stuff, even like scripting and making videos like this, it's a lot easier for me to watch anime when it's dubbed. The biggest show I'm watching right now that's dubbed is One Piece. Like, I'm over 350 episodes into One Piece, watching it dubbed, which, by the way, the One Piece dub is not that bad. I'm going on record and saying that. The One Piece dub is not that bad. For me personally, it's easier to watch the dub because I can turn it on while I'm working, while I'm eating, while I'm making dinner. Like, sometimes when I read subs, I fall asleep because I'm tired and the reading, like, you know, puts me to sleep. So that's my personal journey on dubs. If a show has a dub, I'm watching the dub. But even then, I still watch shows that are subbed. Like, when My Hero, the final season comes out, I'll be watching it subbed, because I'm going to stay caught up every week with the series, right? If Dandadan didn't have a dub, I would watch the sub. I have no problem against subs. I'm more of just watching it because I like it, because I like the show. If it's subbed, I'll get to it eventually, but if it's dubbed, I have a higher likelihood of watching it because I can just do it while I'm doing other stuff. I don't really care. I'm not a sub elitist. I'm not a dub elitist. I'm like the normal person who sits in the middle. And I think that's it. Like, it really just depends on how you personally want to watch anime. Is it a casual pastime that you want to enjoy, or a more hardcore hobby? Like, do you want to watch anime while doing your taxes or eating dinner? Like, yeah, sure, watch the dub all day. But if it's a more hardcore hobby that you're like really into it, sure, you can watch sub. I don't care, right? Sub elitists need to chill, all right? Watching subs only does not make you more of an anime fan than someone who only watches dubs, all right? And just let me put this out there. I don't care if you only watch subs. I really don't. Like, if you want to be a sub-only person because you don't like the quality of dubs or you don't like listening in English, that's fine. Just don't be annoying about it. This debate is ultimately pointless because if you're on either side of the aisle, you're not going to be swayed to the other. And it's also pointless because this is literally all preferential. None of it actually matters in the grand scheme of things. All right? None of it matters in the grand scheme of watching anime. Doesn't matter. It's a pointless argument. So, which side of the debate are you on? Are you team sub or team dub? I implore you to continue this discussion in the comments and make your case politely. Please do not be a sub elitist and be rude in the comments to people who only want to watch dub, all right? I would love to hear your thoughts, feelings, and opinions. Just be nice about it. So I also want to give a huge shout out to all of the channel members because it is your support that allows me to keep making videos just like this. And I also want to thank everyone who does watch the videos, even outside of the channel members. I do appreciate every single one of you who watch these videos and comment and like, because I love making videos like this and just sitting down and like, let's talk about dub versus sub, right? So that's all I have to say about that. If you want to watch more videos, you can check out whatever video I decide to put here. Don't have a specific one to plug, but you can check out whatever videos here. And until the next one, I will see you around. Peace out.